So, dear and respected friend, thank you so much for your kind support. And we are going to start today's session with an invocation of a song. So let me just share the screen.
শরণাগত তুমি স্বাগত, এসো এসো হে মহামানব। শরণাগত তুমি স্বাগত, এসো এসো হে মহামানব। হয়ে আগত করো বর্ষণ, তোমা জ্ঞান আর তোমা সৌরভ। শরণাগত তুমি স্বাগত, এসো এসো হে মহামানব। তুমি সাধন, তুমি পূজন, তুমি ভক্তি কুসুম চন্দন। তুমি সাধন, তুমি পূজন, তুমি ভক্তি কুসুম চন্দন। তুমি বাসন, তুমি ভূষণ, তুমি কোটি হৃদয় স্পন্দন। শরণাগত তুমি স্বাগত, এসো এসো হে মহামানব। তুমি সত্যম, তুমি শিবম, তুমি সুন্দর চির যৌবন। তুমি সত্যম, তুমি শিবম, তুমি সুন্দর চির যৌবন। তুমি শাসন, তুমি বারণ, তুমি সত্যের অনুসন্ধান। শরণাগত তুমি স্বাগত, এসো এসো হে মহামানব। তুমি জীবন, তুমি স্বপন, তুমি শক্তির অনুরণন। তুমি জীবন, তুমি স্বপন, তুমি শক্তির অনুরণন। তুমি চেতন, তুমি কেতন, তুমি ধর্মের সেতু বন্ধন। শরণাগত তুমি স্বাগত, এসো এসো হে মহামানব। শরণাগত তুমি স্বাগত, এসো এসো হে মহামানব। হয়ে আগত করো বর্ষণ, তোমা জ্ঞান আর তোমা সৌরভ। শরণাগত তুমি স্বাগত, এসো এসো হে মহামানব। এসো এসো হে মহামানব, এসো এসো হে।
Thank you, dear and respected friends. Thank you so much for your kind attention. Dear and respected friend, greetings to one and all on 159th birth anniversary of the great soul Swami Vivekananda, the immortal torch bearer of India's, or rather society's awakening to selfhood. Thank you so much for joining us today's international webinar on the very topic, life lessons from Swami Vivekananda, in our international webinar series. Dear and respected friends, this lecture is being organized by Rage Global Foundation USA. It is a movement of extreme pleasure to welcome the guests who are virtually present here to attend this webinar. I would like to welcome Deepika, the VG President, Rage Global Foundation USA. I would welcome the speaker and guest of honor of today's webinar, Dr. Prasenjit Biswas, Associate Professor, Northeastern Hill University, Shillong, India. I welcome Professor Kumar Giri from Madras Institute of Development Studies to be as discussant of today's webinar. I welcome Professor Bula Ma'am from Calcutta University, former professor of Calcutta University, and all respected participant, viewers, and listener both on Zoom platform and Facebook platform. Before the starting of session, first I would like to invite Deepika Daveji to kindly share her view on Vivekananda.
Thank you, Randhir. Fill the brain with high thoughts, high ideals. Place them day and night before you, and out of that will come great work. Following Swami Vivekananda, we have organized a wonderful talk on this powerful day of National Youth Day of India. I am privileged and honored to speak on it today. And I thank noble souls, Mr. Gautam and Dr. Tiwari, for your initiation of this event. Dr. Prasenjit Biswas and Dr. Giri, please accept my heartfelt thank you for your willingness to donate your valuable time for Raise Noble Cause on youth empowerment. And thank you all, brothers and sisters, for joining us today. National Youth Day, 12th January, is celebrated in India. To honor the birth anniversary of Swami Vivekananda, one of the greatest spiritual leaders and believers of youth power. After more than a century and a half, we still get that source of energy of his spirituality and his motivation, which inspires us to love our youth and our country. He was the man who lived in the soil of India and spread the knowledge of Hinduism, our great Vedas, Upanishads, and his eminent importance of all over the world, which has taught the world both tolerance and universal acceptance. He was the one who taught the people of India to love their own country. I am a follower of Swami Vivekananda forever in my life, and to his great philosophy, which always motivates and guides our youth. I was inspired by one of his lessons about to think, feel, and work for your nation. Head to think, heart to feel, and hands to work. So meaning those who are intellectual and have ideas think a lot but feel nothing for the nation, no heart to feel. Those who are emotional feel everything by heart but don't think or work towards the betterment of the society. And some are very good people. They can feel, they can think, but do nothing for the society or the nation. I thought that if I am a true follower of Swami Vivekananda, if I can think, I can feel for the nation, I must put my hands to work for my country. And so I founded the Raise Global Foundation to educate, engage, and empower our young generation, where we emphasize on financial literacy, drug awareness, and women empowerment. I am especially inspired by Swamiji's thinking that women must be the contributor in a nation's progress. If half of the population of our country is not participating in financial growth of our country, then how could we say that we love our society and our country, right? So we need to work on making women financially responsible and contributing to the nation's progress. And we need to make them responsible in the financial progress instead of keeping them to only household works. So a little but continuing efforts, we at RAISE are trying to follow Swami Vivekananda's works for our soil, our mother country, India. From the inspiration, we believe that the service to mankind should be selfless, as service to mankind was service to God. I would conclude my speech on Youth Day here by saying that youth is the power of nation, and if youth of our nation is empowered, no power in the world would be able to stop India being a superpower. Jai Hind.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Randhir.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your motivational talk and very, very inspiring talk. Dear and respected friend, let me give a kind of brief context of today's talk. Rabindranath Tagore told to Romain Rolland, a French biographer of Swami Vivekananda. He said, if you want to know the India, study Swami Vivekananda. In him, everything is positive and nothing negative. As a radical reformer, he is a symbol of excellence manifested in man. His philosophical insights was admired by many eminent scholars and philosophers such as William James, Robert Ingersoll, Nikola Tesla, and many important freedom fighter leaders like Lala Lajpat Rai, Jawaharlal Nehru, Mahatma Gandhi, and many important social reformers. Speaking about Swami Vivekananda,
Randhir,
he
just forgive me for interfering. I cannot keep myself, resist myself by saying that Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose from Bengal was his biggest follower. Vivekananda.
Yes, ma'am. And even that is why C. Rajgopalachari, he said, I'm quoting him. But for him, Swami Vivekananda, he said, we would not have gained our freedom. We therefore owe everything to Swami Vivekananda. So his philosophy motivates man everywhere to get fired with this conviction that a human being is capable of doing anything and everything by bringing out his or her inherent excellence. So self-actualization, the philosophy of self-actualization being involved. So first, with this brief summation, first I would like to invite Dr. Prasenjit Biswas sir. Let me give a kind of brief introduction to him. Professor Prasenjit Biswas teaches philosophy at Northeastern Hill University, Shillong. His research interests reflect an interdisciplinary orientation that includes ethnophilosophy, ethnicity, and indigenous identities. He has a deep sense of philosophy, and he has also published a number of papers in journals and contributed chapters to edited books and many articles in different newspapers. Thank you so much, sir, for accepting our invitation to this very, very important day. So first, I would like to invite you, kindly share your view on the very topic, lessons from Swami Vivekananda. Sir, over to you. Sir, kindly unmute yourself.
Right.
Yes.
Good evening, and my hearty salutations for this August gathering and the listeners, where I can see Ms. Dave, I can see Ananta Bhai, my very dear brother Randhir apart, other participants, some of whom I know, most of whom I don't know, but a very good evening to all of you. To remember Swami Vivekananda in today's context. As this talk is a kind of a general talk, yet I would like to take you to certain intricate aspects of Swami Vivekananda's life, teachings, and philosophy, so that it has a bearing in our understanding, in our practices, and in improving the quality of life all around. I begin by saying that I remember something as I was reading Vivekananda in my early childhood. The first lesson that was taught to me by one of the followers of Vivekananda, who happened to be my grandfather. He told me that with Vivekananda, he engaged himself in going out to the suburbs of Kolkata and suburbs of West Bengal to redress the ailments of people who were suffering by a pandemic back in 1898 to 1900. 2 years, there were relentless works among the poor people, among the slum dwellers, and those who suffered in a terminal sense because of the pandemic that was going on. And this pandemic was arising from the Great Bengal famine, that took its spell, as you know, in Bankim Chandra's Ananda has described what kind of a toll it took on the mind, soul, body, and the community of Bengal since mid-18th century. Excuse me. And the toll was continuing in the form of deep ailments that turned itself into a pandemic, and a whole lot of people were perishing within the geographical boundary of Bengal. The Bengal that we knew of mid-18th century consisted of the present Bangladesh, the eastern part of Bengal and the western part of Bengal, extending up to Bihar and also to parts of present Orissa and coming down to certain parts of Assam as well. So this sort of bigger geography of Bengal infested with pandemic back in 1898 was a major concern of Vivekananda and his team of followers that included my grandfather as well. And then my grandfather gave his entire life for Vivekananda Math, and he lived in Belur Math. He collected alms in building up this Belur Math and spent his life with Sarada Devi as well. So I know a lot of the episodic activism, episodic knowledge about how a combination of a deeper sense of wisdom with a committed sense of acting, serving for those who are needy is combined in the life and ideals and practices of Swami Vivekananda. And that's an apt example to remember today in this moment of pandemic. And I remember also with a tinge of sadness that on 4th of July, 1902, at the age of 39, Vivekananda passed away. He passed away because of diabetic kind of ailment by himself, and we could not contain the diabetic ailment, which was a costly treatment. Every prescription required around 500 rupees in the British time to purchase those medicine that were prescribed to Vivekananda by doctors. He was not given free treatment by the doctors of the time, so he had to manage money to purchase those medicines, but he could not save his life at the age of 39 because of diabetic overexertion, as doctors have reported in his death certificate. Vivekananda passed away, which was a moment of irreparable loss for Bengal, Bengalis, and the India and the mankind. Because by the time Vivekananda was known worldwide after his famous Chicago lecture, where he advocated that every human being is potentially divine, the goal is to manifest the divinity of the every human soul. So what does divinity mean? For Vivekananda and Ramakrishna Paramhansa, divinity is partaking in people's life, is to get into the core problems of the lives that are around, the multitude who are suffering, and making a sincere effort to alleviate, ameliorate them from the suffering. Now, how do you ameliorate people from suffering? And what suffering is all about? Is it suffering of the body, suffering of the soul? And if it is a suffering of the body and the soul, is there a way of redeeming us from that kind of suffering? Vivekananda, being a student of philosophy, in its pre-enlightenment avatar as Narendranath Datta, had read a lot of Western philosophy and combined it with insights of orthodox and heterodox schools of Indian philosophy. And this you can see flowing as philosophical arguments flew in a very natural way in Vivekananda's Chicago speech. And not just in one speech, in speeches after speeches, and in letters after letters that he wrote from abroad to his followers. And everywhere, it's all dotted with a number of philosophical arguments. So what is the argument that Vivekananda gives to redeem oneself from suffering? And this is an interesting argument. The argument is that our mind and the body, both in equal proportion, are only partial truths. They are each wrong in part and each right in part. So mind and body and this composition, which is constituted by the mind and the body, can never be fully right. It can only be partly right and partly wrong. And Vivekananda argued that both mind and the body are seated in something greater, which is, as you know, is an Upanishadic wisdom. Mind and the body are seated and they are subsisting on the substratum of the revealed universe of Atman, which is individualized in an individual body and in the individual soul. So when the individual body and the soul suffers, what is the way to heal oneself? To heal oneself, to heal thyself, one has to overcome the bounds of the body, the bounds of the mind. The bounds of the body and the mind could be overcome by surrendering oneself to the universal force of cosmic creation, which is known as Brahman in Upanishads. And Vivekananda puts a philosophical logic in order to argue this, how you can cross this bounds of body and the mind and can surrender yourself to the universal. I quote from his Chicago lecture, where he says, very, very interestingly, he says, what do I mean by reason? He's trying to say that it's by reasoning that we can reach up to the existence, which is the most universal. And I quote a little longish paragraph to give you his argument. And this argument is coming in his famous Chicago lecture, which is, is coming in a lecture called Reason and Religion. I'm quoting from my friend Makran Paranjape's contemporary reader on Swami Vivekananda, page 46. The lecture is titled by Vivekananda and his editors as Reason and Religion. And there he's saying, let me quote this and read it. It's excellent, inimitable. And therefore I'm quoting it in toto before I discuss this in a while. What do I mean by reason? I mean what every educated man or woman is wanting to do at the present time, to apply the discoveries of secular knowledge to religion. The first principle of reasoning is that the particular is explained by the general by the more general, until we come to the universal. For example, we have the idea of law. If something happens and we believe that it is the effect of such and such a law, we are satisfied that is an explanation for us. What we mean by that explanation is that it is proved that this one effect, which had dissatisfied us, is only one particular of a general mass of occurrences, which we designate by the word law. When one apple fell, Newton was disturbed. But when he found that all apples fell, it was gravitation, and he was satisfied. This is one principle of human knowledge. I see a particular being, a human being in the street. I refer him to the bigger conception of man, and I am satisfied. I know he is a man by referring him to the more general. So the particulars are to be referred to the general to the more general, and everything at last to the universal. The last concept that we have, the most universal, that of existence. Existence is the most universal concept. So we have to move towards existence through our suffering, through our pleasure, through our bodily afflictions, through our mental constructs. We have to reach up to the level of existence, which is simultaneously and
I think, sir, you are muted.
somebody muted me. Okay, so we have to reach up to the universal, and that's the work of reason, and not the work of faith. And this work of reason is satisfied by placing the mind and the body, the sensations of suffering and the goal of redeeming, in something that is higher, something that is more general, something that is existentially available before us, by way of placing, by way of turning, by way of submitting, by way of capturing and taking us to that general, to that existential state of being, or state of awareness. Now this happens through reasoning. It doesn't happen through faith. And we have to apply secular knowledge, and this secular knowledge to our religion. This is what Vivekananda prescribes. And this prescription is actualized, as Randhir was saying. This prescription is actualized, Vivekananda would say, by taking, I quote, by taking our own reasoning to its right conclusion. taking our reasoning to its right conclusion. And this would mean karma yoga. Karma yoga is the attaining to unselfish work of that freedom, which is the goal of all human nature. Every selfish action, therefore, retards our reaching the goal, and every unselfish action takes us towards the goal. That is why the only definition that can be given of morality is this: that which is selfish is immoral. That which is unselfish is moral. So we have to draw a distinction between selfish and the unselfish. The unselfish is the awareness of the existence, which is simultaneously a kind of a conceptual awareness mixed with a non-conceptual goal of movement towards freedom. It is also a non-conceptual sense of existence that takes us beyond the existing notions of mind, body, and even the self-identity. How does it take us beyond the mind, body, and the self-identity? It takes us by creating a sense of being conscious. And a sense of being conscious is created by a sense of unity between the inner and the outer, between the self and the world, between that which is unselfish and that which is common, that which is for others. How that unity is achieved? By using reason, by using the acts of consciousness, is something that Swami Vivekananda advocated in terms of a practical sense. And he would call it, if this is not preaching a practical God, how else could you teach a practical God? This is teaching the practical God. And God here is not the personal God. Personal God has to be transformed into the impersonal Mahat, as Upanishads would say. Upanishads would be pretty categorical to say that the conflict between what is desired and what ought to be desired belongs to our ordinary Vyavaharika life. And this ordinary Vyavaharika life needs to be transcended by the higher goals of transcendence, where we are able to resolve the dualisms, the conflicts that arise in our mind. Vivekananda points to the work of the mind and the body that remains embroiled into a conflict. And the task of reason is to extricate the mind and the body from the conflict and to take it to a far greater length or a far greater distance, which is leading to a certain kind of a mystery, which is there in the heart of things, and yet which is beyond it, like the beauty of a flower, which is infinitely more than its botanical facts, like the sense of humanity itself, which cannot be contained in mere gregariousness. So this is how a sense of unity can be created through the infinite medium of moving towards something higher, which is an infinite medium of truth. Ashim, Mahat, these are the words that are used in Upanishads, which is finding a world where all our disciplines of moral life find its ultimate truth. And our mind is roused to the idea that there is an infinite medium of truth through which goodness finds its meaning. That I become more in my union with others is not a simple fact of arithmetic. We have known that when different personalities combine in love, which is the complete union, then it is not like adding to the horsepower of efficiency, but it is what imperfect finding its perfection in truth and therefore in joy what was meaningless when unrelated, finding its full meaning in human relationship. Now, this is moving towards a whole that transcends the parts. And this is a movement that takes us to something like a reasoning of reason, a kind of a meta-reasoning. And meta-reasoning crosses the limits of factuality, and it takes ones to the level of the underlying principles and to the overlaying laws that arise in the horizon. So you move towards an awakened state. Arise, awake till the goal is, and move till the goal is reached, as Vivekananda says. So therefore, the partial truths of suffering can be redeemed in this wholesome journey towards the ultimate truth. And this is something that Vivekananda borrows from Upanishads. And it's a deep philosophical insight. And this is what he calls as the practical God. Where is there a more practical God than he whom I see before me? A God omnipresent in every being, more real than our senses. For you are he, the omnipresent, God Almighty, the soul of your souls. And if I say you are not, I tell an untruth. I know it, whether at all times I realize it or not. He is the oneness, the unity of all, the reality of all life and all existence. You see? So this is where he's quoting from Upanishads. And by quoting from Upanishads and by prescribing that kind of a unity, Vivekananda is trying to say that if you feel like Christ, and you will be a Christ. Feel like Buddha, and you will be a Buddha. It is feeling that is life, the strength, the vitality, without which no amount of intellectual activity can reach God. Intellect is like limbs without the power of locomotion. It is only when feeling enters and gives them motion that they move and walk on others. And that is so all over the world. And it is a thing which you must always remember. It is one of the most practical things in Vedantic morality. For it is the teaching of Vedanta that you all are prophets and all must be prophets. The book is not the proof of your conduct, but you are the proof of the book. How do you know that a book teaches truth? Because you are truth and you feel it. What a wonderful way of simplifying the ethical, the moral, and the spiritual perspective that leads Atman. And Atman is not the simple combination of the body and the mind and the existence, but it is something that is an inner sense, a deeper feeling that drives one towards a higher, a nobler sense of truth. It enables us to reach towards a higher truth. And this enabling to reach towards the higher truth, is not just going through the particular sensations of suffering, but it is going through a number of particularities, going through the plural experiences that one can gather. And through these plural experiences, the difference between one experience and the other is simultaneously grasped and it is also overcome. So the simultaneous grasping of the particular and overcoming of the differences between the particular is this search for the non-dual. Ramchandra Gandhi, in his prolific writing about Sita's kitchen and his idea of communicating, talked about the breaking down of the particularities and differences and dualities and binaries. The moment we are able to break down these dualities into a continuum, into a common medium of communication, it is possible to reach out to the practical God It is possible to reach out to those who are suffering. The sufferer can reach out to other sufferers. The sufferer can alleviate the suffering by way of reaching out to the suffering of the others. And it is by joining in suffering. It is by coming together in a certain state of existence that state of existence can be overcome. And this is the most serious leap of faith that Upanishads suggest, that Vivekananda also has suggested following Advaita Vedanta, that there is a leap of faith in taking part in the lives of others. And that leap of faith leads us to the ultimate truth. And that leap of faith takes us to something nobler, higher, Mahat, or something that is known as the universal, the Paramatma. And this is how Vivekananda crosses and goes beyond the narrow limits of our knowledge. And in his own unique words, before I end this, I would say that, again, arise, awake, and stop not till the desired end is reached. Utthastito jagrata pratpa varanano nibodhi. Young man of Calcutta, arise, awake, for the time is propitious. You can remove Calcutta, is referring to Calcutta in a lecture already. Everything is opening out before us. Be bold and fear not. It is only in our scriptures that this objective is given unto the Lord of He. We have to become of He, fearless, and our task will be done. Arise, awake, for your country needs this tremendous sacrifice. It is the young man that will do it. The young, the energetic, the strong, the well-built, the intellectual, for them is the task. And we have hundreds and thousands of such young men in Calcutta. If, as you say, I have done something, remember that I was that good-for-nothing boy playing in the streets of Calcutta. If I have done so much, how much more will you do? Arise and awake. The world is calling upon you. In other parts of India, there is intellect, there is money, but enthusiasm is only in my motherland. That must come out. Therefore, arise, young man of Calcutta, with enthusiasm in your blood. Think not that you are poor, that you have no friends. Whoever saw money make the man. It is man that always makes money. The whole world has been made by energy of man, by power of enthusiasm, by the power of faith. And here comes the leap of faith from the reason that Vivekananda advocates. Here comes this journey towards a kind of a spiritual union with the Paramatma, with the bigger, with the universal, towards which the afflicted body and the conflicted mind can always cross the bound of afflictions and conflictions and move towards something that is a quest for freedom. And this is what Vivekananda advocates in its guideline for practical action, which is directed towards society, to a particular problem, so that everyone can take part and can alleviate others from that kind of bounds of affliction and confliction. I think with these words, I'll stop here, Randhir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For giving me this.
Thank you so much, sir, for an excellent deliberation and so informative at the same time, full of so many deep philosophical insights. When you delivered talk, you really, invoked the very foundational idea, like secular knowledge, idea of harmony and awareness. And awareness is very, very deep insights in the whole philosophy of Swami Vivekananda. And his understanding of realization, religion as realization. It is not talk, it is not doctrine, not theories. It is being and becoming, not hearing or acknowledging. It is a whole soul becoming changed into what it believes. Thank you so much, sir. I think we have very eminent discussant. So with your generosity. First, I would like to invite Professor Anant Kumar Giri sir to kindly share his view over your lecture.
Thank you so much, Randhir. Thank you so much, Prasenjit. Greetings from the road. I am in train, and this resonates with the life of a bit Swami Vivekananda. His life of wandering and suffering, identifying suffering, working with people. And Swami Vivekananda's vision is of Daridra Narayana. And
Sir, if you mute your camera, then we can have better voice quality.
Yes.
Please mute your camera.
So I have so Vivekananda's for example, and such. Therefore, his vision and practice of Vedanta, especially practical Vedanta, also draws upon many other questions. And he builds upon this there are universal that right, he invited us to in many religions, and Swami Vivekananda did draw upon all these sources, not just conceptually, but also as a living practitioner, as a living follower of faith. And no wonder then, in Swami Vivekananda and the Ramakrishna mission, when the Ramakrishna mission was being founded in the sacrificial fire, so lines from New Testament were being read, and Christmas is celebrated as a holiday in Ramakrishna order, and the book Imitation of Christ is was in the bed of all the monks in the Ramakrishna order. This whole engagement with suffering and its amelioration and transformation also challenges us to think about suffering and slavery in cross-sectional manner. Some time ago, when I was reading Frantz Fanon, his challenging work, The Decade of the Past,
Sir, you are not audible. I think we lost Professor Anant Kumar Giri's connection. So we are trying to connect him. So meanwhile, I would like to invite Professor Gyan Gului. Yes.
Yes, I'm audible.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Excuse me. Well, excuse me. Thank you very much. It was really very interesting, and I take some notes in the meanwhile. And well, I would say that one of the points which have attracted most my attention was, for instance, in the thought of Vivekananda, for instance, his foundation that there is no ground for the distinction between between men and women, because both of them are divine, both of the sexes are divine, and that is the foundation, so to speak, the theological foundation of the equality of sexes. This is one thing that has attracted my attention, for instance, while reading him. The second one is peculiar, would I say, very interesting indeed, a position that the absolute is present, that is, it is immanent, but it is transcendent too. That is, there is this fascinating conception of the compresence of two attributes, two properties in the absolute, which apparently could be in contradiction with each other. That is, how it is possible that the absolute is immanent, which would connect Vivekananda rather to the conception of Advaita Vedanta, but in the same way, he says, well, it is immanent, but it is transcendent too. And this is a point which is, for me, very interesting because, among other things, because it can be strongly connected to Western philosophy and particularly to the speculation meditation of Nicolaus from Cusa, who has similar position about the absolute, the God, the deity, the divinity, in order also to make clear that the nature and the essence of the divinity as something in itself which goes beyond our intellectual capacity. So this point of the compresence of a transcendent property and of the immanent property, position, so to speak, in the reality of the absolute is something which is, in my opinion, at least very fascinating. Another point is, I said, the foundation also of not only of the equality of men and women, but also of the equality itself as such of the individuals, founded on the presence of Atman in everybody. That is, since as Atman is in everybody, is in a certain sense immanent, so there is no ground, no foundation for any form of separation, discrimination between individuals and between human beings, because this would go against the very presence of the absolute in every one of us. So these are the points that, of course, is related strongly with the assertion that every soul is divine, that the divinity is present in every soul. That is, that there is no ground to say the soul, the divinity is only in a certain part of reality and not in another part. I would say these are the points which most attracted my attention while reading his works. Of course, then it is to be said perhaps that he strongly influenced many parts of Western philosophy. One for all, for instance, which we could mention is some position of new transcendentalism in Western philosophy, which were attracted by his positions and which have acknowledged their depth to the thought of Vivekananda. So I thank you very much. It was wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Gyan Gului, for asking very deep question. And I would request Prasenjit Biswas sir to kindly note down these questions, and I will invite you to answer these questions. So, dear and respected friend, if you have any query, please kindly indicate me in the chat box. So now I would like to invite Mniti Pradhanji to kindly share her view. Mniti Pradhan is a very famous poet. Yes.
Thank you. So, good evening, Hello, am I audible? I'm sorry,
yes,
I'm a bit unwell last 2-3 days. I have sore throat, so I thought I'll speak less. I hope my voice is understandable.
Yes, yes.
Hello, good evening, everyone. So I must say that I am enriched by the presentation of Professor Prasenjit sir and all the discussions. Then I feel that like Gandhi, Vivekananda's philosophy cannot be discussed and learned within few hours. It is a vast subject and vast thing to grasp on. So the more simplistic way, what we can as a grown up, we can just inculcate in our life. There are only few things like 7-8 points. Just I thought can share. That is no like that we can do it is humility as a precious virtue. We all love. And second thing is curiosity. Like no, that is very essential part of life. Unless you are curious, you cannot go there where you just have to watch from the distance. Like, and the third thing is compassion and kindness. That is actually the golden rule. And I don't know. Means the people who are Nastic, they probably don't believe, but I do believe also. No, along with that, Hinduism. The main thing is with us. It is not only Hinduism, many religion, in fact, that with prayers we can sell any storm, any difficulties, and we should work for towards preserving the unity. And sixth thing is respect for the culture, and for every belief it is necessary, so that you can be more empathetic towards the life. So, and this seven is having a holistic approach perspective towards life. And the last thing is that is the humor. Humor is the very much, that is a sign of intelligence, in fact. Not taking things very seriously and personally, that humor can add that thing too. For the student, there are a lot of things to learn from Vivekananda. It is like honesty, concentration, that humanitarianism, focus, truth, no discrimination. So those things are there. But the thing is, I want to ask this question: what are the methods, and how do we inculcate the values and the philosophy of Vivekananda in today's youth? Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Now I can see one raised hand. Vidya Sagarji, please ask your question.
Good evening, sir. Thank you, sir, for giving opportunity. Yeah, my query is any opportunity that options to think about the counseling, philosophical, like thoughts of Vivekananda will be helpful about the counseling of students, inculcating different type of empathy and brotherhoodness, about the collective society, like we are separated. If we have lost any family members due to pandemic, that our reaction is different. But any other family, we lost any other family members and unknown person, that less I'm not so depressed, but so we are so much attached our only family members and neighbors only and relatives, but I am not so feeling so empathy about the society, other than that we are not directly related, economically related, or etc.
Okay.
Is any opportunity to philosophical, like always we are thinking that psychological counseling, psychology is important, and there are okay, sorry yes. To prolong.
Okay, we have understood your question. Thank you so much. Now Dr. Tiwari, please ask your.
Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to answer the query raised by the previous speaker. In ongoing pandemic, when people are at loss, they have lost their kith and kin, and people are very much worried and how to help the people to grow a collective sympathy, to to uh, help them out, help them in getting out of that agony of loss. One principle of Swami Vivekananda was that is collective salvation. Collective salvation, the idea of collective salvation, Swami Vivekananda got from Upanishada, the story of that Hiranyakashyap and Prahlad. When Hiranyakashyap was definitely given punishment by Narasimha, and to reward Hiranyakashyap, when God Himself says, "Yes, you have done a wonderful job by showing your faith in God. Now you deserve to be in heaven." So Hiranyakashyapa, if he would have been selfish or self-centered, he would have taken the privilege or received that offer. He said, "No, if you want, then make all people of my state who are suffering from some or other problems go to heaven, or let me stay here, uh, observe their problems and provide them whatever help I could." So that philosophy of collective salvation, which was later on means conceptualized by Swami Vivekananda, is very much relevant in today's concept. If we are earning for us, we are not doing anything for the humanity. That collective salvation is that thought which inspires us, which inspires the people of the contemporary society, that they should not die for their own benefits. They should do something for community. They should do something for society. They should do something. So this has been one thing.
Thank you, sir. Yes. Okay. I will ask you to offer vote of thanks at the end. But I have some questions. So we are actually here time constraint.
Thank you.
So Prasenjit sir, I got some questions from Facebook. Professor Giri was talking about Swami Vivekananda engagement with Ramakrishna Brahmans. Even Sister Navidita also invoked the idea of synthesis self. So a person is asking how we can have a kind of philosophy of tolerance. Can we learn philosophy of tolerance from Swami Vivekaji, and how we can enrich this idea? The second kind of question we are getting about, why Swami Vivekananda have a kind of contested, conceptualization about, towards Buddhism, right? There is a conflict, a kind of conflict, So these are the two questions, and along with Professor Gyan Gului's, concern, you can answer this concern.
So I start with Ananta Bhai's question, as you had posed it, Randhir. So, I mean, there is no such pure synthesis in Vivekananda. Vivekananda is prescribing a mode of action by which certain obstacles, certain barriers, certain afflictions, certain conflicts, and some such reduction of the potential of the human is overcome. So every time it's a situation of encountering partly known and partly unknown kind of a scenario. In that partly known and partly unknown, one has to negotiate between the knowledge and ignorance, between capability and limitations, between going out and restrictions and restraints. So how do you negotiate these aspects, which is always in a kind of a dual mode? And this dual mode, arises from a certain substratum of reality. The reality is still not reached up to the moment you are stuck with a dual mode. This dual mode arises in the feeling, in knowledge, in plan, in even projections about an action. So therefore, it's a complex tending of the human being, which Vivekananda points to. And from this complex tending, one transforms oneself by way of some kind of an unselfish action, by certain kind of yoga that Vivekananda talks about, a kind of a yoga which aims higher and which creates a certain spirit, a certain inactive performative mode in oneself, in order to come out of the conflicts and the problems and the barriers and the kind of dualism that one is facing. So this is absolutely fundamental about human situation. And from there one reasons, one also takes a leap of faith. One opens up multiple possibilities of overcoming. So this is how you overcome the conflicts and dualities of life. Now coming to this important question about tolerance, that tolerance is a virtue, and it's a virtue of a modern man. That modern man is able to tolerate the differences and the serious differences with other people. How does modern man or the modern person negotiate these differences? They negotiate it by a sense of knowing the differences, and this sense of knowing the differences would lead to a sense of unity, a sense of coming together to something that is higher, that which could be agreed upon as a kind of a common goal or as a kind of a common truth. So there is something untrue about differences that could be removed by way of practicing and by seeing a certain light at the end of the tunnel. And this is how tolerance can lead us to a certain kind of acceptance of others. And once it leads us to acceptance of others, it is possible to live with multiple ways of life without conflict between them. Although there would be differences, but differences are always subject to certain mode of overcoming. Okay. Now coming to Gyangului Segalebra's question, which is a very important question. From the Western point of view, there has been always this question about this notion of Atman and the notion of Paramatman. Whether Atman and Paramatman have a foundation in reality. That is one question that Segalebra has asked. Now, reality is something which is one, which is non-dual, which manifests itself. It's not something that is given. So this manifestation of reality is what is called as real. Now, this manifestation arises through a certain kind of a transition, a certain movement of consciousness from one level to another. For example, in Advaita Vedanta, we talk about Vyavaharika, Pratibhashika, Paramarthika. Vyavaharika is this ordinary sense of real, which is conflicted with all kinds of pluralities and dualities. Pratibhashika is the way that conflicted reality is represented, where the subject is trying to unify the conflicted reality to a certain perspective, a perspective from which things are right or wrong. And then that Pratibhashiko perspective now elevates one to take a kind of a exercise, take to an exercise of reasoning, which will lead to a leap of faith to reach up to the most universal, the highest possible. So this stage by stage movement is a certain process of rising, is a certain process of moving up, which is reducing the gap between oneself and something that is available at a certain height, at a certain level, which could be conceived as higher, and which can further lead us to something that is the ultimate, which is supposed to be the absolute. Now, all this is embedded in human consciousness, but this embeddedness of absolute is in human consciousness is something immanent. But the moment the human consciousness looks back at itself, reflects on itself, on this embedded sense of absolute, that is the moment from where Vivekananda asks a very, very pertinent question. How the knower will be known? Can the knower know himself? That the knower is knowing what is immanent and what is embedded. How would the knower know herself? The knower can know herself only by transcending and not by looking down on oneself, that I am so low and the goal is so higher where I have to still reach. That's a kind of a regressive looking down on oneself, which should be forbidden. And that requires a sense of action, a kind of a karma yoga. So this is how, if this whole epistemic process operates, then transcendence and immanence are located at two different points of time, at two different moments. They are not located at the same time. They are located at different points of time, at variation with each other, and there's a movement from one to the other. And this is how Indian philosophers would look at it, and how one would bridge this up, this gap between immanence and transcendence, depends on how one takes a move in one's own embedded consciousness. Now, this brings us to the gender question, as gender question in Swami Vivekananda. Vivekananda thought about women, as Shakti. Now, the Bengal tantric tradition with which Vivekananda was very much familiar. Shakti is simultaneously productive, reproductive, and transcendental. Shakti in the form of Kali, in the form of Durga, in the form of the feminine principle of creation, is overwhelming. And this is the creative force, the vital force. So therefore, vitality, creativity, and this cosmic energy is embodied and combined together in the figure of the mother, in the figure of the feminine. And it has a distinctive agency role. But this agency role is one of the manifestations of Atman, or Paramatman. And this manifestation that happens at the level of experience finally gets sublimated in the realization of Brahman. So therefore, either one starts with the masculine, one starts with the neuter, one starts with the feminine. The trinary or the binary is resolved in the ultimate experience of achieving the ultimate reality, which is simultaneously a metaphysical and an epistemological move guided by the tenets of practical work that one is undertaking. So this is how he would sort of remove this binary, but with the recognition that there is a difference between one gender and another. He is not degendering the gendered identity of the feminine and the masculine. This is to Professor Segalabra. It's one of the very important questions which arises in Ramakrishna Vivekananda tradition, and I think I have sort of answered this question. The other important question, Randhir, with a little minute, is about Buddhism. Vivekananda's critique of Buddhism. Vivekananda thought that Buddhists are creating two different worlds, the phenomenal world and the noumenal world. But Vedanta doesn't accept these two kinds of worlds. The phenomenal is in the noumenal. The noumenal is in the phenomenal. Now, what is phenomenal? Phenomenal is the way one is aware of the world as an object. And noumenal is a kind of awareness that one has in oneself. And this awareness, which is connected to a larger awareness, the intersubjective awareness, is the noumenal. So intersubjective and the objective are bound together in Advaita Vedanta in the form of, desire that arises with the stimuli, and also the way the stimuli lead one to a certain kind of an expression, a certain kind of a releasement of that desire. And that is to lead oneself to a certain sense of willing, a certain kind of free will, which arises from a certain direction that desire takes one to, a certain intentional desire, resulting into a realization of one's own inner potential, which Vivekananda calls as buddhi. And who creates this will? Vivekananda says, will is coexistent with the universe. That's something like a pratitya samutpada position, that will and the universe exist together. It's a mixture of the internal and the external. Vivekananda says, will is a compound. Suppose, he gives a thought experiment. Suppose a man were born without any senses. He would have no will at all. Now Buddhist formulation of the will and Vivekananda's formulation of the will have no difference. The only difference is in terms of whether absolute is phenomenal or absolute is noumenal. And that difference is a metaphysical difference. And then finally, if we take a Kantian kind of distinction between will is within time, space, and possession, then how can will be absolute? Vivekananda would say that we know that we are beyond thought. We are beyond thought. We are beyond the phenomenal and the noumenal. And we come to this by negation. When every phenomenon has been negativated, whatever remains, that is the Tatmamasi. So after negating all these attributes, the adventitious attributes, we reach up to the real. And we cannot simultaneously say that it is both snake and the rope. That's not possible. Buddhists are committing a metaphysical error. So that's the elaborate philosophical critique of Buddhism that Vivekananda gives. And lastly, I agree with Minotiji's observation. And only thing, method is unselfish work. That's the method, that's the question she asked me. Other affirmations, I fully agree with it. And also about empathy and philosophical counseling. Yes, that sense of infinite, that sense of realizing potential that everyone has is an expression of empathy, which is fundamental in our very process of knowing, because that requires an engagement with ignorance, as Vivekananda points to. Engagement with ignorance is what creates that sense of empathy. And that is a way to do philosophical counseling as well in response to Vidyasagarji. And there is no lack of solidarity for the other, and no listening, no reduction of empathy if someone else is harmed, because that creates a kind of affliction in my soul, which would drive me towards, finding a way to redeem oneself and another from that kind of affliction. And that's a kind of a journey and a quest that will happen in an ethical sense by way of an empathic binding between one human being and another human being. So I think with this, I have completed the question. And my last comment is that all that is conditioned can become unconditioned, and all that is unconditioned can become conditioned. That's the beauty of the dual movement of non-dual, of the Advaita that Vivekananda is prescribing. That's it.
Hello.
Thank you so
Just
much.
sorry to interrupt. Somebody had asked the question about brahmacharya, right? Somebody had asked.
Brahmacharya is a way of life, and brahmacharya is not to be taken in the sense of celibacy, but it is to be taken in the sense of overcoming, the bodily desires, the bodily states, in order to pursue the higher goal of ultimate truth. So brahmacharya is just a step in the process of reaching out to the ultimate truth and the ultimate goal. It's not really a permanent state of life. Was Vivekananda a brahmachari? Vivekananda gave up his brahmacharya in company with women. Vivekananda admitted that. And how he gave it up, how that communion, how that union happened, and how Vivekananda celebrated man-woman relationship is all there in his autobiographical accounts as well. So therefore, brahmacharya is not a strict celibacy. There's nothing like a strict celibacy in human life, because human life is meant for a certain pleasure seeking, a certain enjoyment, but at the same time overcoming the binds of pleasure and enjoyment by binds of knowing the ultimate reality. So knowledge must have a primacy over desire. That's the argument that Vivekananda gave.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. We are very grateful to your philosophically sound presentation and excellent deliberation. Now it's a time to offer a vote of thanks. So I would like to invite Dr. Devendra Kumar Tiwari, sir, to kindly offer vote of thanks.
Thank you so much, sir, for giving me this opportunity to extend the vote of thanks at this August moment. I would like to compliment the distinguished speaker for today's session. It was like Swami Vivekananda himself was preaching from the land of America, and we were listening his philosophy, and it was such a brilliant presentation. Sir did justice with Vivekananda and his philosophy. Definitely, it was a nice experience to have sir at this moment. To offer the vote of thanks formally, it's my honor and privilege to extend this vote of thanks on behalf of Raise Global Foundation, USA, on this very occasion of National Youth Day of India, which is celebrated on the birth anniversary of Swami Vivekananda. First of all, I would like to deep my head in sincere gratitude to Professor Prasenjit Biswas sir for being the resource person of today's session and highlighting all the core philosophy of Swami Vivekananda. I would like to express my deep felt gratitude to Deepika Dave, the CEO of Raise Global Foundation, for initiating this session from the land where Vivekananda preached this neo-Vedantic philosophy. And I would like to highlight one statement by Deepika ji. She concluded her speech by the statement of Vivekananda or his philosophy: service of mankind is service to God. Means Nar Seva is Narayana Seva. Really, it was very apt for today's session. So thank you very much to Deepika Devi. I would like to express my deep felt gratitude to Professor Anant Giri sir, although because of some connection in network, sir could not express his thoughts, but the questions raised by sir was very relevant. So thank you so much to Professor Anant Giri sir. I would like to express my deep felt gratitude to Professor Gyan Lui ji for a very relevant question and compliment, which was very pertinent according to the talk. So thank you so much. And Minati Pradhan ji, really we are blessed to have you in every session. Such a deep thinker and very apt in raising the points and giving her comments and compliments. Thank you so much, ma'am. I would like to express my deep felt gratitude to all the participants from all over the world to make this meeting successful by maintaining patience, raising very meaningful questions, and definitely without stable audience, no program can be so successful. So thank you very much to everybody, every participant. Last but not the least, I'm thankful to Professor Randhir Gautam for planning, executing, and doing everything and making this event materialize. So thank you so much, sir. Finally, my greetings and namaste.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
and
I,
wish
I
you a very
take your
happy
leave. I take your
anniversary.
leave, Randhir. Huh?
Yes, sir.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
Very
much.
so
We
much,
are
much.
sir.
so
Thanks
grateful.
very much.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you.
so much.